Hey, welcome back to The Dive. ATMs in the UK prohibiting cryptocurrency, sanctions, and crypto as a crowdfunding method, as well as the company's monthly production update, Ethereum mining, and their recent partnership are the topics that our guest will deep dive into today. She is the Vice President of Hut 8 Mining. Sue Ennis is joining us today. But before we bring you Sue's interview, do me one quick favor and go ahead and smash that subscribe button, please. Hey, Sue, welcome back to The Dive.
Hey, how are you? Lots going on these days. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Yep, we have a lot of ground to cover today. So let's start off with Ukraine's government. They have raised almost 13 million through cryptocurrency after posting appeals on social media for donations of Bitcoin and other digital tokens. This appears to be a growing crowdfunding method. What do you think the impact this will have on the overall cryptocurrency market?
So I think that I think the number was actually closer to about 30 million that the Ukrainian government
Wow.
was raised. And I think just in general, it really speaks to the power of these decentralized ledgers and the ability to actually do peer-to-peer lending. But I think also a conversation that's really sort of had that's began and the repercussion of this event, in particular what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, is that there's now a greater conversations around, people using crypto for sanctions avoidance. And I think our position is, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is cryptography, Bitcoin is math. You cannot regulate math, but what you can regulate is the on-ramps to this ledger, the on-ramps to the cryptography itself. So exchanges, wallets. So we do really think that this is a great opportunity to really teach the market, and especially regulators, that it's not the Bitcoin network that's the problem with respect to some of these sanctions avoiders. It's, there needs to be greater KYC controls around some of the on-ramps to this network. But otherwise, we think it's an incredible proof of what this ledger is about, and it's peer-to-peer lending beyond sovereign control and state intervention. So we're really excited about it.
Aside from sanctions, a financial source in the UAE confirmed that Russians were buying property in Dubai and using cryptocurrency as a way of getting their money out of other jurisdictions and into the Gulf state. How closely are you following this type of news?
Yeah, so I think that goes to sort of what I was just mentioning, that, this is where the importance around thoughtful regulation in the spirit of innovation comes into this piece of the network, i.e. the on-ramps, the ways, like, because there still needs to be a way to actually get onto the network to use the Bitcoin network, and the person receiving the Bitcoin still has to figure out, who it is that they're transacting with. So I think, again, creating more focus on that piece of what it is that people should be focusing on versus we need to ban Bitcoin because it's used for sanctions avoidance, I think is what the priority should be. Because if you even look at the US dollar, I believe it's something like 2% of GDP globally is 2% of the US GDP is actually put towards money laundering activities. The UN came out with a stat around that the US dollar is sort of the number one instrument used in money laundering. So how do you get around that is that you have very stringent KYC requirements for some of the on-ramps for this US dollar to move. So the same thing needs to happen and is happening and is being developed in the Bitcoin and crypto space.
Now, the regulatory body in the UK announced crypto ATMs are prohibited from operating in the UK, and ATM operators need to shut down their machines or face enforcement action. Crypto ATMs have drawn controversy in the past, but in the US, there are hundreds of Bitcoin ATMs in Walmarts. Do you think that there's any real reason for concern here?
I think again, a lot of it has to do with some of this, narrative around nefarious actors using Bitcoin for illicit activity. I think, the EU also actually outside of the UK, so they were looking at potentially even banning proof of work Bitcoin mining, and they actually overturned that proposal. So listen, in terms of the ATM space, I suppose they just see it as being able to mitigate an on-ramp and a greater way to ban people without any KYC accessing Bitcoin. So it's okay. I mean, there's lots of other ways to get Bitcoin. And if you're not a sort of nefarious actor, you can figure it out. So, but I don't see that happening in the US anytime soon.
All right, so let's move on and talk about Hut 8. The company published its February monthly production with 289 Bitcoin mined. Does the company plan to stick with its HODL strategy?
Yeah, for sure. So actually 16% of that production was mined using our strategy of mining Ethereum, but getting paid out in Bitcoin. So, it was 14% of that total production was actually mined at a price of less than $2,600 per coin. So those are tremendous margins, even though Bitcoin is still trading within not bear market territory, but we are sort of seeing sideways trading on Bitcoin. And so we're still getting tremendous margins on at least 15 or 14% of our total production. And no, for now, look, we're OG hodlers. We're one of the first companies that ever considered this asset as something that should be actually held on the balance sheet. And part of our whole strategy is building out as many possible ancillary lines of fiat revenue so that we can mine and hodl as much Bitcoin as possible. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that your Ethereum mining, after you mine your Ethereum, you get paid in Bitcoin. How does that work? Why is that?
It's done on the pool level. So and last spring, we bought these cutting edge GPU miners from NVIDIA. It actually was a limited fleet. We were one of 3 customers globally who were able to get our hands on this fleet. And then we partnered Luxor mining pool, and it's a functionality within the actual pool itself where you can mine Ethereum, but then actually get paid out in Bitcoin on the pool level. So we're not playing around with hedging or transactions or currency FX at all. It's done on the pool level, and so again, that ultimately results in a cost of less than $2,600 per Canadian per Bitcoin. And I think though, back to what I was saying earlier in terms of the ancillary lines of business revenue so that we can keep mining and hodling, we recently bought the data center assets of a publicly traded company called Terrago, which I believe I came on earlier and talked about. And part of that is, so the underutilized capacity of those data centers we're actually going to be filling with infrastructure and services for the Web3 ecosystem. But also that's another ancillary line of revenue because that business actually came with 400 commercial customers and 19 million in trailing revenue last year. So that just is part of our strategy. Diversification is key. Building in the ecosystem is key for us in order, again, to sort of keep our core business of mining going and growing.
Now, speaking of diversification, the company announced a multi-year partnership with Enthusiast Gaming. We have to ask, what caught Hut 8's attention in the gaming industry, and how does that fit into your strategy?
So as I was just referencing, we bought these data center assets because a piece of those assets we're going to be dedicating towards supporting some of the use case, some of the storage infrastructure and render needs that we're seeing in the Web3 ecosystem. So blockchain gaming, some of these layer 2 blockchains also need storage. And where these, for example, layer 2 solutions or games are being built and stored right now is in the traditional data center space. And one of the problems there that a lot of these traditional data center operators don't understand open ledgers. They don't understand, or they don't like how hard the machines run with projects because it's a lot different of a compute and compute load when you're rendering a blockchain gaming project versus, let's say, being a financial institution that's just storing customer information. So accordingly, that means that these companies oftentimes have to pay higher prices at traditional data centers. They often get shut down because of compliance concerns, because again, their teams don't understand how some of these distributed ledgers work. And that's where Hut 8 comes in. We are infrastructure engineers. Our CEO, Jamie, has spent the past 20 years in the data and infrastructure space. So we understand how to run infrastructure and we understand blockchains. And we're now going to be providing storage, render, FX, and just support and security for these like growing eco applications in the blockchain space and Web3. And yeah, EGLX, we're really good friends with the CEO, Adrian. EGLX is the ticker. They have one of the largest group of gamers in North America. Addicting Games, Luminosity Games is all under their umbrella. And so we thought it made a lot of sense, not only from, sort of having our first customer to prove out what we're doing with this new side of our business, HUD 8 HPC in the infrastructure space, but also from a marketing perspective, we're going to be doing some really cool in-game co-branded assets with their new blockchain game called EV.io. And again, we think that it's a really interesting way to sort of get more fresh retail/investor eyes on the HUD 8 stock and also on the EGLX stock, because like 80% of millennials trade stocks and 73% of millennials and Gen Z are stock traders and gamers. So it's a whole new potential investor base that we're going to be, creating these really cool in-game experiences for. So yeah, that was sort of our thinking behind it.
Okay, very cool. Well, one more thing before I let you go here, Sue. What should investors be watching out for over the next quarter that we haven't touched on today?
I think that I would be really paying close attention to just the importance of diversification, given some of the market volatility and potential headwinds we see with now China going back in certain areas back into lockdown. Obviously, the geopolitical unrest with Russia and Ukraine and supply chain disruption as well because of that. And I just really think that the market should watch about how we really do feel confident that this diversification strategy and not just mining and hodling in blockchain and Web3 is the only way to win. We really think that building and diversifying your business is the best way to grow shareholder value. And also, again, partnering with applications of the future in the blockchain gaming space like EGLX. So just stay tuned and we're really excited. And thanks again for having me back on.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'll talk to you later for an update. Thanks so much for watching today. We'll be back again tomorrow with the latest news and updates. So be sure to stay tuned by hitting that notification bell before you go.